happened recently where Bernie Sanders sat down with an interview with Tim Dillon. And all of a sudden, when the subject of immigration came up, people started losing their shit. I am talking about progressives, Bernie supporters, just like, oh my God, Bernie, what is happening to you? How can you say those things? What are you doing? And I was just kind of surprised because from what I remember, as you will see, Bernie always had that position on immigration. And somehow that just flew over people's heads, people who were supporting Bernie, whether it was 2016, whether it was 2020. So what is everyone in an uproar about? Let's get into it. You know, this is not about the next episode per se. I think some people missed the rerun. They missed the rerun episode, and I'm going to show it to you today. Here it is, folks.
Well, I want to talk about for a minute because Trump's main issue, it was immigration. The migration seems to be the biggest issue in the UK election. It was the biggest issue in the US election. It seems to be a massive issue all over the world. And I wanted to talk, I don't like the ICE raids. They're barbaric. I think showing up to a college graduation and deporting somebody who's there to watch his daughter graduate from college or high school, whatever it is inhumane. But I will point to an article from 2007 in the Wall Street Journal about the Krieger poultry processing plant in Georgia. And what it was after a raid, you had the owners of that company were forced to hire American workers. A lot of them were African-American workers, and then raise wages to around $7 to $9 per hour. And this was the direct result of not having a pool of undocumented labor. I think a lot of people don't like to see people zip tied in the middle of the street, but they do look at the Biden administration letting in 10 million people, and they're suffering, and their health care doesn't exist or is too expensive. And they're looking at all the people coming in and the justifications for that these are all jobs Americans won't do. The service industry, you know, whether it's manufacturing or landscaping or whatever it is, these jobs, because this is what ever since I've grown up, we've always heard that. These are jobs Americans won't do. Mark Andreessen said recently that the only jobs that won't be replaced by AI are venture capital, which is his job. So my question is there a position that the Democratic Party can take that is obviously anti-people getting dragged out of their houses, but recognizes that citizenship should mean something, that we should have a border, and that, you know, having laws that protect workers is important, and that people employing undocumented workers or illegal labor is driving down wages for Americans?
Pause here for a second. So Tim Dillon, if I remember correctly, I believe Tim Dillon supported Donald Trump, right? So we are seeing a shift here with immigration where even some of those that did support Donald Trump, even Marjorie Taylor Greene called this out on Tim Dillon's podcast, which was that it's not necessarily that they agree with all of Trump's immigration policies. In particular, they're not fond of the ICE raids, the way that it has been handled. So now you're hearing Tim Dillon is having an issue with that as well. It's kind of interesting to me because I'm kind of like, I could have sworn he said this is what he was going to do. I could have sworn Trump said that's what he was going to do. I don't know, maybe not as harshly or whatever, but I don't know what people were expecting. But what has some progressives in an uproar is Bernie Sanders' response to this, that I guess they did not know this about Bernie, about his position on immigration. Listen to this.
You've asked a lot of very important questions, good questions. Let's start off with the basic. So long as we have nation states, right, which we have, you got to have borders, right?
Right.
If you don't have any borders, then you don't have a nation, right? In a sense. So has historically the United States done well on the Democrats and Republicans in protecting the border? The answer is no. Trump did a better job. I don't like Trump, but we should have a secure border, and it ain't that hard to do.
And this is what made people this is what made people, I guess, lose their minds when they heard this, because this clip is circulating around on Twitter, and people were like, what the hell is wrong with Bernie? What are you doing? What are you saying that we should have borders? What do you mean we should have secure borders? What has happened to you? What do you mean the Democrats didn't do it right and you agree with Trump on immigration? Now, obviously, Bernie doesn't support the ICE raids, but people were shocked by this. And I was shocked, not that Bernie said that, but that people who supported and voted for Bernie Sanders weren't aware of his position on immigration. And I say that because Bernie has been talking about this for a long time. I'm even going to show you a video from 10 years ago. 10 years ago, he's always been very vocal about how he felt about the border. He's never agreed to open borders. He also is one of the people that made the case that mass immigration hurts American workers. And see, when people hear Trump say that, they're like, oh, Trump is, he's angry, bad guy or whatever. But Bernie said that too. Bernie has been saying that for years, and somehow it just flew over people's heads. And I'm wondering if it's a little bit of this, that when someone is saying something that is really good to you and gets you excited, is it the possibility that you're so focused on all the other things that they're talking about that makes you excited that you overlook the one thing that you may have an issue with? And I'm seriously just asking. I don't know, because I did think everybody knew that because he was always vocal about it. So he does not think that the Democratic Party did a good job with immigration. And also, he doesn't think Biden did a good job. Let's continue on here.
Biden didn't do it. Those before him did not do it. We should have a secure border, period. I think most people in the Congress agree with that.
Why don't you think he did it, just out of curiosity?
Pardon me?
Why don't you think Biden was more proactive with securing the border?
He did. He did some things. He was not, I think by the end of his term, if my memory is correct, the number of illegal folks coming in had gone down. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that overall it was a good job. It was not. All right. So that's point number one. You need a border. Let's have a border. And we have certainly the technology and the manpower to make that happen. Number two, what happens? What is the appropriate response to, we think there are about 10 million undocumented people in the country today. Less than 3% of our population, okay?
Probably, there are estimates that are higher, but let's say it's 10.
Those are the best estimates I've seen. Okay. Why did let's be clear, those people act, my father came to this country from Poland, came in legally. Yeah. They came in illegally, period. Okay? Yeah. It was illegal. What are most of those people doing right now? Are they?
Oh, working hard.
Good. Right.
None of those people should be faulted for coming here.
Okay.
We should start faulting people like Steve Wynn, who run a $1 billion hotel on
and exploit them, right?
On illegal labor. And why aren't we enforcing E-Verify?
Good.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so you got these folks who came to this country the same reason my dad came to this country. He grew up poor in Poland, came for a better life. And that's why they dragged their kids, from Mexico, Guatemala, thousands of miles, to have a better life, to escape the violence and the poverty that they're in. They're here now. The truth of the matter is, and one of the things that I really, really dislike about Trump and what demagogues always do is this country, as we've discussed, has enormous problems. And what demagogues always do, instead of trying to deal with why we have those problems, what are the causes of the problem, what are the solutions, you blame a powerless minority. In Europe in the 30s, it was the Jews, it was gypsies. In this country, it was gays, it was blacks forever, and Latinos, always somebody to blame, rather than dealing with the real issue. So anyway, you got roughly 10 million people in this country, most of whom, by the way, work very hard. And according to a number of studies, the crime rate, Trump goes around, talking about, somebody does, commits a terrible, terrible murder. Trump is talking about, oh, they are lawless, disgusting, subhuman human beings. Look at this crime here. Truth is that the crime rate in communities of undocumented people is lower than the general average. Do you know that?
Well, the crime rate should almost be none, right? If people are coming into America and they are, coming here for a better life and they're properly screened, the crime rate should almost be nothing.
Well, it is. It's lower. All I'm saying is This is not like, it's not like they're criminals. Everyone's a drug addict.
I don't think anyone thinks everyone is a criminal, and I don't think that anyone, but we do have a ton of income inequality, as you've talked about. So assimilating people into this economic structure is difficult. It is inevitable that some people that cannot find work will turn to crime, and I mean that's just inevitable.
But my only point is this: this is not a community that is prone to large amounts of crime. All right, so what do? You got 10 million people here. Most of them are working hard. Your point, I think, is well taken.
Yeah,
a lot of employers exploit them.
Yeah,
and by the way, often these people are paying Social Security payroll tax, paying Medicare payroll tax, paying other taxes, and they don't get the benefits for what they pay, by the way.
Right.
All right.
But this has always been a Republican issue. Like, this is why I don't understand why the Democratic Party allowed the issue to be kind of demagogued, because even, yourself, you were out there advocating always for workers' rights.
Right.
And, when somebody talked about open borders, you rightly said that this is something that Koch brothers would love.
That's right.
They were huge proponents of immigration. The Chamber of Commerce, huge proponents of immigration. A lot of, radical libertarians like the Kochs and others, huge proponents of immigration. So when they're bringing all these people in, and whether it's 10 million or more, I think there are credible estimates that are a bit more, but I don't think it's necessarily about the exact number. But why were Americans told at a certain point that they should not consider certain blue collar jobs worthy of their time? They should take out student loans and go to a 4-year university. And then a lot of those jobs that were, ended up going to people that came into the country legally, and the employers are paying a lot less money. I think there's a lot of people that feel that these pro-business interests brought in a lot of people to increase the profits of their own companies at the expense of people that saw a lot of their jobs shipped overseas.
There's a lot of stuff that's going on.
So long story short, when we get down to the meat of this, right, like corporations are trying to find ways to cut costs as much as they can because they're greedy. CEOs, they're greedy, right? So what they're going to do is that they are going to find labor that is going to be cheap. At one point in this country, maybe your parents, maybe your grandparents experienced this. I know my grandparents did. At one point in this country, we had a thriving, working class, blue collar populace in this country. At one point, it was possible where you could have a factory job and still own a home and have a family. If we look back even at the Great Migration, when we talk about like Black people moving from the South and moving to some of those cities in the North and also in the Midwest, whether it was Chicago, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, et cetera, back when we had a lot of manufacturing still in the United States, go back and look at some of the pictures of Detroit before they moved the jobs. Go back and look at what Detroit used to look like when people had those blue collar jobs and they had homes before these CEOs and these corporations decided they wanted to cut labor, to cut costs, and so that they could put more money in their pocket. It was possible at one point in this country where, yes, you could own a home, you could have kids, and you had that job where you worked in a factory. That was possible. That has changed. A lot of this goes back to the greed at the top. And so when I see people get angry with countries like China and say, oh, China is going to pass the United States, this isn't right. Maybe you shouldn't have sent jobs overseas. Maybe you shouldn't have had all those factories closed so that you could get cheap parts from other countries. And then it wouldn't even be that way. At one point in this country, that was possible. it was possible for people to raise a family off of those types of jobs and own a home. Now we're looking at days where people graduate from college hoping their job isn't taken by AI. Let's really talk about it. Have student loan debt, can't buy a home, can't put a down payment on a home, and they're living in shoebox apartments with 3 and 4 roommates. So something changed. Let's go on a little bit more here, and then I'm going to show you the past, what I call the reruns.
One of the things, in my view, I mean, for people like the Koch brothers, that was their goal. It was cheap labor. But I think where we are right now, I mean, is you have X number, whatever it is. I think my understanding is about 10 million. What do we do? And the answer is, I think right now, and where Congress has failed, although there have been bipartisan efforts, is obviously comprehensive immigration reform.
Right.
And in my view, a path towards citizenship. And we have failed in that regard. I think that right now, that is the goal that Congress should set upon itself.
We'll pause it here. You can watch the full interview on Tim Dillon's channel. But what I want to add is, there should be comprehensive immigration reform. But don't you think it's kind of interesting that all these years and all these different presidents that we've had, that hasn't been done? Don't you think it's interesting that every presidential election, I mean, we can go all the way back decades, go all the way back to Ronald Reagan. You can watch the videos yourself. And he had a very different, a more, I think, generous approach when it came to immigration. So did George H. Bush. If you go back and watch those debates of his as well, don't you think it's interesting that nobody fixed this issue? I wonder why. So when we talk about the next episode, right, for Bernie, this particular situation, I think that people miss the rerun. So you can't move on to the next episode if you haven't seen the reruns. So we're going to go back 10 years ago when Bernie Sanders used to call into Thom Hartmann's show. So people are going to look a little bit different. This is Thom Hartmann back in the day. And I want you to hear what Bernie Sanders said about immigration 10 years ago. This is the rerun.
Last caller was asking your thoughts on immigration
in general. Yeah. So let me divide it in two parts. Richard, number one, we have about 11 million undocumented workers, people in this country. Some of them have been here for many, many years. It is my strong view that we need a path towards citizenship for those people. But I think the second part of your question asked about, I think, the guest worker program is what I think you were referring to. And they have programs like the H-2A program, the H-1B program. And I have historically had real concerns about those programs. We have heard from a lot of high-tech workers, people involved in computer programming and so forth, who are saying, this program, this guest worker program, is bringing in folks from Russia and other countries at lower wages than American workers in the high-tech industry get.
Pause. 10 years ago, Bernie Sanders expressed on Thom Hartmann's show his concern that he had about H-1B visa programs. And somehow this was missed. That's why I'm kind of taking a step back, and I saw the responses on social media, people calling out Bernie Sanders and say, how dare you say this about immigration? He's been saying this. He's been saying it for years. And another thing I think that some people may not want to admit, if you look back at the history when it comes to socialism, one of the things that socialists in the past have argued is that this does affect wages for the people who are already in that country. And see, I feel like, again, somehow this is just all skipped over. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with what was said, but I was surprised to see that people did not know this about Bernie. Let's continue.
And I have serious concerns about that and have offered amendments to deal with that issue. The second part of it is that there is in the immigration bill language that would bring in a lot of low-wage workers, unskilled workers, and that I have had a very difficult time understanding. When we have youth unemployment in this country, where if you're white and you're 17 to 20 and you're a high school graduate or a dropout, it's 33%. If you're Hispanic, it's 36%. If you're black, it's 51%. These kids desperately need jobs. And they need jobs starting at the very bottom so that they can eventually get the experience and work their way up. And I just don't know why we need to be bringing in a whole lot of other folks who are not skilled at low-wage jobs. So that has been a concern of mine.
Don't that sound similar to what Donald Trump said when he said we don't want to bring in the low-skilled workers, even though, Donald Trump says whatever, he's full of it too, because he brought in the Afrikaners, right? He's like, oh, they're farmers. They're good people. Let's go ahead and bring them in. He did that as a favor to Elon Musk. But doesn't that sound similar when Donald Trump made that same comment and he said that we want the workers that are the high skilled workers, not the low skilled workers? Now, here's my question. For those who supported Bernie Sanders and you called out Donald Trump for making that comment, how do you feel about the fact that Bernie was making that comment before Donald Trump was? This is 10 years ago. And this isn't the oldest instance of it. He's been saying this for years. So you see, this is the problem when people get into these parties and they're like, I want to call out my own.
I got into the last immigration bill passed the Senate, which alleviated some of my concerns a little bit, was an amendment for $1.5 billion, which would provide jobs and educational opportunities for young people. Right now, it is summertime. You have a lot of kids hanging out on street corners. They should be working. There's enough work to be done. We should provide them with jobs. So that's kind of my view on that issue, Richard.
So 10 years ago, talking to Tom Hartman, and here are other examples as well. I just want people to see this.
I wonder how it could be that with a supposed scarcity of workers out there, that wages and benefits are going down. The guest worker provisions in this bill, which will bring many hundreds of thousands of lower wage workers into this country, will only make a bad situation even worse. And I think at a time when the middle class is shrinking, the last thing we need is to bring over a period of years millions of people into this country who are prepared to lower wages for American workers. The idea that in the United States of America today, we need more people to come from other countries who will work at high-tech jobs, whether it's computer programming or other information technology jobs, because we just don't have the workers in America.
I'll just pause this so you can see the date. This is 2007.
America is absolute nonsense. On one hand, you have large multinationals trying to shut down plants in America, move to China, and on the other hand, you have the service industry bringing in low-wage workers from abroad. The result is the same. Middle class gets shrunken and wages go down.
I support immigration reform. I think we need comprehensive immigration reform. The one area where I am concerned about, and I've played an active role, is I don't want to see companies utilizing guest worker programs to lower wages for American workers.
Corporate America is kind of using immigration reform as a means to continue their effort to lower wages in the United States of America, and we must not allow that to happen.
Is it really true that we can't find American workers to do those jobs? Frankly, I don't believe it.
Open borders?
Open borders.
That's a Koch brothers proposal. The
Really?
idea, of course, I mean, that's a right-wing proposal which says essentially there is no United States.
But
Bernie Sanders said here in 2015 that open borders is a Koch brothers agenda. He said it was a right-wing thing. It's interesting. He said it was a right-wing thing, but he said it is a Koch brothers agenda.
Anybody
It would make a
excuse
lot
me,
of the global poor richer, wouldn't it?
and it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state. What these corporations are doing is going outside of the country so they can pay people from Russia, Eastern Europe, lower wages than they can American high-tech people. I think that that's wrong.
In terms of 2007 immigration reform, yeah, I did vote against it. I voted against it because the Southern Poverty Law Center, among other groups, said that the guest worker programs that were embedded in this agreement were akin to slavery. That bill was opposed by LULAC, the largest Latino organization in America. The Southern Poverty Law Center called its guest worker programs akin to slavery. We don't need slavery in America, where guest workers are forced to stay with their employers. I wonder.
So that has been Bernie Sanders' position for a long, long time. And it's just baffling to me that people are surprised, or people just notice it now when he says it on Tim Dillon's podcast, but he's been saying it for years, including in those debates. So that's not a new thing. So you can't move on with this particular situation. People are not moving towards the next episode because they never saw the reruns. So I'm just baffled. I'm baffled that people never saw. They didn't know that. He said it on the debate stage multiple times. He said it in interviews multiple times. And now all of a sudden people are like, oh my God, Bernie Sanders says that Trump was right on immigration and that Biden was wrong and the Democrats didn't do enough. But that has been his position. And honestly, and like I'm telling you guys, if you look through the history, look up the history of socialism, and you'll see that oftentimes was the same position that renowned socialist scholars had as well. So there's an education piece that has been missing here. And again, you don't have to agree with it, but something was missed. Something was really missing here. And then I want you to think back to in 2016, some of the people that voted for Bernie in that primary against him and Hillary Clinton, and then turned around and voted for Donald Trump. Remember, they both had a populist agenda and similar positions on immigration. Now, of course, Bernie doesn't agree with the ICE raids like that. No, he's against that. But Bernie Sanders does not believe in open borders. And as you've seen from the video footage that I showed you, for the longest time, he never did. So it seems like there's a piece of education that was missing there. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.